What's up, content creators? Welcome, my name is Peter Andrus, and today I'm bringing you a tutorial on how to use the effect called the Ultra Key in Adobe Premiere. The Ultra Key is used for using green screens or blue screens or anything like that in your editing process. So, let's jump right into it. I already have my project open here in Adobe Premiere. I have a sequence already set up, and I have a couple of clips that were recorded on a green screen. Here's one in a relatively wide shot. Here is one framed up in about a medium close-up. And what I'm going to use these for is to take those images and make it appear that my character is standing in this image of a kitchen. So I have two images for the kitchen as well. I happen to have a background image of the kitchen, and then I also have just the kitchen island selected out with a transparent background. And what I'm going to use this for is taking that wide shot of my character that I had right here, and I'm going to use that to put the character in between the background and the island so it looks like he's standing in front of the sink. So first, let's take that shot. Let's take a few seconds of it with I and O for my in point and out point. And I'm going to put it on my sequence. You can drag it using the drag video button. You could just drag both video and audio if your clip has it by dragging together. You could use the comma or the period to put them onto your sequence with insert and overwrite. Whatever makes you happy. There's lots of ways to get something on your sequence in Adobe Premiere. And since we have nothing else on the sequence, doesn't matter which way I use right now. So you can see that here I have a recording of my character in front of the green screen. The problem is not the entire screen is green. There's extra stuff recorded in the background here that needs to be cut out. So before I get to my Ultra Key, I'm going to use a different effect called the Opacity effect. I'm going to come over. You can see when I click on my clip, it does come up in properties here. I'm using Adobe 25 right now. If you haven't updated yet, properties is a new panel that comes up. And of course, you're used to having the opacity options in effect controls. Now they pop up here as well. But in particular, I'm actually going to go and not use the properties panel for this. I'm going to use effect controls the way I would have in the past. And in particular, I'm going to do that because the opacity options here in effect controls have the options for what's called an opacity mask. A mask is where I am going to cut out part of this image and say, hey, I don't want to look at the entire image. I only want to look at a certain piece of it. The opacity effect has a couple of different options. The first is what's called an ellipse. If I click that, you can see it automatically just created a circle and cut out everything that's not in the circle. And you can move that circle around. You can adjust all of the endpoints from the circle, and you can do whatever changes you want to try to make it so that your character fits in there. And in particular, we mentioned that we're trying to get rid of everything that's not green. So right here, it looks like I've gotten rid of all the green except right on the bottom, and I'm not even going to bother getting rid of that bottom because we mentioned I'm going to put my character behind this island, so I'll never see where his legs are. So this is one way of cutting out that extra stuff. Of course, sometimes the shape doesn't work for you. If you ever need to delete a mask, you can just click on it here in Effect Controls and click the delete key on your computer. And now I'm back to a fresh scene, and I can now click, maybe I want a 4-point rectangular mask, and it's not actually rectangular once you start drawing with it, but it is still 4 points of contact where the computer will now let you cut out everything else that's not in the green. And it looks like my character stays in that area, so I could probably go with this as well, but I do want to show you the other option that you have besides the ellipse and the 4-point mask. I'm going to click and delete. You could also draw your own mask using the free Draw Bezier tool. If I click that, you can see it's creating a new mask, and I could now click and move around my character and create as many points of contact as I want. You could get as close or far away from the character as you want to. Depending on how much your character moves, the more they move, the more space you might want to give them. So I click and I go around them, and you can see as I hover over my first point again, a little circle appears next to that Bezier tool, and that's letting me know that I am closing my loop. When I close that loop, that creates my new mask path. That's the shape of it, and now everything outside of the mask has been cut out. Looks pretty good. I'm going to stick with that. Just a quick note, sometimes you end up clicking these buttons multiple times by accident, and what'll happen is you can see every time I do this, it's creating more masks as I keep on clicking the button. And it'll get very confusing because you'll be like, wait a minute, why am I seeing different parts? I didn't, this rectangle that's on the side here didn't used to be in the mask that I was using. You can just go back and delete them. You can look at what each mask is doing by clicking on it, and you'll see the path. Okay, that's the one I drew. Mask 2 was a random ellipse that I didn't mean to keep in there. Or maybe you did. Maybe you wanted multiple masks. That's why the option is there. But if I only wanted the one, I'm going to start clicking on these and hitting the delete key to get rid of them. Okay, so I'm back to just my one mask, and now I'm ready to use the Ultra key because my character is completely surrounded by a single color. The Ultra key, you'll find it in Effects. If you can't find your Effects window, you could always come up top to Window, and you will find it right here. Depending on what workspace you're in, that will get it to open on your screen. Here is the Ultra key. If you can't find it, you can always type in the word key or the word Ultra, and it will pop up for you here in Video Effects in the folder called Keying. So I'm going to take that Ultra key and I'm going to drag it onto my clip, which of course, as always, brings it up in my Effect Controls window. And I mentioned before, if you can't find Effect Controls, that too can always be found by going to Window, Effect Controls. So now, underneath my opacity masks that were built in, Ultra key has been added on to the bottom. So the first thing, of course, setting my key color, I'm going to take this little eyedropper tool, click it, and select the green. And you can see all the green just disappeared from around my character. Theoretically, that's fine, but as I'm scrolling back and forth here, you can see there's a little bit of a shadow of my head up here. There's like some faded parts here that aren't quite disappearing. The reason that's happening is because my green screen wasn't completely evenly lit. Even lighting is hard to come by these days if you're not making a professional setup in a studio. But not to worry, we have ways around that. First off, this is just with the default setting. There is another setting called Aggressive that can very often fix these problems for you. If I click Aggressive, that usually can get rid of a lot of it. You can see that got rid of most of the glare that was to the left of my character's head and most of what was down here. But I can also see that it's kind of making some artifacting happen around my pant legs. So even Aggressive wasn't perfect for me. So what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to customize this to make sure it works as well as possible. So to do that, I am going to start changing the options in this little drop down called Matte Generation. And to make sure I get the perfect image here, right now I'm looking at this in what's called Composite as my output. That composite output will show me exactly what's on my screen. If I had different layers here, it would show me everything piled up. Instead of showing the composite output, I'm going to change this to Alpha Channel. What Alpha Channel does is it makes the part of your image that it's keeping turn white, and the part of the image that it's keying out turns black. And now you can very easily see that there are parts of this image that I wanted black, that I wanted to key out, but they didn't quite go. So I'm going to come down to this matte generation now, and I'm going to start dragging these numbers until I get it to perfectly take out all the green around me and leave in everything on my normal character. There's no rhyme or reason exactly. There's no perfect way to tell you to do this. I usually like to drag my pedestal number up. Pedestal is a black level. Usually dragging that up does quite a bit. I'll play around with the other numbers and see where that moves things until I get it to look exactly the way I wanted it to go. Seems like dragging the shadow down worked quite a bit. And again, I'm just dragging around until I get it to look exactly the way I think it should, where everything that I'm keeping is white and everything else turns black. That looks pretty good. Again, I played with the numbers until I got rid of as much background as possible. And now I'm going to switch this back to composite. And yeah, that looks pretty nice. It seems like I just have my character. There's also a few options down here that are really nice, both the matte cleanup and the spill suppression, and even a little bit of color correction. You can use these if you ended up with a little bit of a green hue going around your character because they were too close to the green screen. You can use these, the color correction, the spill suppression, and the matte cleanup to try to change the edges and how much your Ultra key is affecting where your character blends onto the background. I especially like the idea that here in spill suppression, you can desaturate a little if you were ending up with a little bit too much green going around your character. You could also work a little bit with that in the color correction area. Okay, so that's it. That's how you get your Ultra key to work. And of course, now it should look perfect when I start mixing it with my other pieces. I'm going to drag my character up to my second layer. I'm going to put my background kitchen behind them. I drag, I trim, and now you can see my character looks like they're in a kitchen. Of course, they're not the right size. I'm coming back to effect controls, and I can scale things up until it looks perfectly the way I want. I just changed the size of the kitchen itself to 48%. So when I now bring the island in front of my character, which of course on the sequence means it's on top of my character, I'm going to do the exact same effect to make the island match the same size. So here on the kitchen, I changed the scale to 48 on the background. So here on the kitchen island, I'm going to change this number to 48. And that puts my character now behind the island. The last step is, again, to make it look like my character fits the right size. So I'm going to select them, and I'm going to change the scale on them until they look about the right size and the right position that they might be standing in that kitchen themselves, maybe doing some dishes. It looks like something the character might be doing the way he's moving his hands around. And with that, now I have a character in the kitchen with his hands down in the sink. So just one more time to recap. You take your green screen shot. I'm going to use the medium close-up that I have this time. You bring the piece of the medium close-up that you want onto your sequence. Give it an in point, give it an out point. Bring it onto your sequence. If you need to cut out any of your background, you can do that with effect controls. Coming to the opacity for that clip, make sure you're clicked on the clip when you go to effect controls. You can see when I just did that, it actually brought up the effect controls for a clip that I wasn't even looking at. It was the clip we did just a moment ago. So click on your current clip that you're looking at, come on over. If you need to cut out part of your background entirely, you can either draw or use a default mask in order to do it. Click, 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 and then of course, come back to the end, close that loop. And if you need to, once you have these, you can always drag them on or off the screen. If you drag them off the screen and you can't find them, you can zoom back out from whatever zoom you're at in order to figure out where they went. There they are. So I could click and move them around. Also, you could add more spots by using your pen tool down here. So if I'm on my pen tool, you can see when I hover, now it's a little pen with a plus sign, lets you add extra points of contact that you can now click and drag. You can also see that it started creating them with what are called Bezier handles that lets me create curves. All of this just there to help you if you want to cut out parts of your background. And again, you can click and drag things around however you need to in order to get the image to look the way you want and take out some of your background before you've even attempted the green screen. Once you've taken out anything you needed to, you can now apply the Ultra key. You come to your effects, type in key, take your Ultra key, and apply it to your clip. You could either drag and drop, or if you're already selected on the clip, you could double click it and that'll bring it up here too. And now Ultra key is down at the bottom of my effect controls. So I'm going to eyedropper, select my green. You could see it disappeared, but I always want to double check, go from composite as my output to alpha channel. You can see it didn't quite get rid of everything. Come to matte generation and start playing with the numbers until you get all the background to disappear and all of your character to stay in white. I only had to change the pedestal a little bit on that, and it looks like that did it perfectly. Change back to my composite. I can drag this up to a higher layer on my sequence and now put a background behind me. I already had this kitchen background scene that I was using in that last clip. I'll drag that behind me, and there we go. My character is now still in the kitchen, just zoomed in a bit from where it was before. And as these are quick clips, the audience would probably never know that I cut them together separately. And that's it. That's how you use the Ultra key, the opacity masks to cut out extra pieces, and of course, some layers to put a character into a different background. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else you want me to cover. Happy creating.